1-4, I think they're done. I think that's it. No argument can be made unless there's just a monumental collapse in the division. So, I mean, it's a winner take all. It's definitely both have to win or they go home, that type of deal. So that's why I think Cam has the better chance of playing, simply for that reason alone. And he's shown that he's a winner. I mean, he wants to play the game. He loves football. A lot of people don't like him, but he certainly loves the game. That's why I'm leaning more towards him playing. But I definitely can see what you're saying. It follows Ron Rivera. We talk about being a risk taker, but when it comes to his people, he doesn't try to risk their health. I mean, he's a good coach. So
definitely. And I mean, that was the part that I had a little trepidation with. It's the idea that you kind of want to say that Ron Rivera understands that, this is his last chance to get it, to kind of get it, get over that hump. It's bad enough teams have a hard time coming back from 1-4. And again, Carolina will hear that stat all week. I believe it's like something like 78% of the time you do not make the playoffs. They'll hear that stat all week. So something to that nature. You go down 1-5, and that will be the next thing that they say. Well, no team has ever came back from a 1-5 start. So all that'll be played into it, But I think that might be the factor that makes Ron Rivera say, you know what, Cam, I need you. We'll play against New Orleans. You got the bye week to rest up, and then we'll hit the second half of the season and go from there. That may be the only reason why I can see Cam Newton giving it a go. And not to mention that, like you said, Cam's a warrior. He actually wants to play. It's not like, he's going to be one of those guys like, nah, coach, I want to sit out. No, Cam likes to play. He likes the spotlight and nothing else. He's going to like the idea that people said I had a concussion and here I am playing again. So, I mean, he loves that defiance. I think there's a chance, there's a small chance that I think he plays, but I don't give it a great chance that he does. Although, it would make sense if he did.
A lot of it, I think, definitely comes down to what are the doctors going to say? Because he's got to be cleared. He's got to go through a very harsh series of tests, especially after all the grief the NFL is catching for him already being hit and not being diagnosed with a concussion and not being taken out the game. When to me it was obvious that, hit needed to be monitored and needed to be looked at, and it wasn't. So, I mean, they're kind of under heavy pressure when it comes to Cam right now because he's been put in the spotlight. I mean, he went from being, for those who don't know, if you get a concussion, you're more likely to get another one because your brain has not evened out. I don't know the medical terminology for it. I just know what I've read. Your equilibrium's simply not there. If you're not fully healthy, you're more likely to injure that again, get another concussion, and make things worse and possibly permanent, like in future pain and future suffering, that type of deal. So, I mean, I think that's why they're so hesitant to clear him now. He probably could have played last night, but they did not want to, have that risk. And I think we're still in that same boat, and with that heavy eye being on them right now, the likelihood of him passing, if he has any type of symptoms, is almost zero.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think people, as you were, alluded to, they don't understand that the true ins and outs about concussions. I've maintained that he suffered two, just as you have, that he suffered two concussions in a 4-week period, which makes him a hell of a lot more susceptible to getting a third one. It's not to mention, people just think it's the idea that your brain shakes or, something like that, but it's a lot of things that go into it. The sensitivity to light and sound. I know the doctors recommended Cam not even attend the Monday night game because they were afraid that because of his concussion, the noise and the lights and, the all of the, all the excitement going on around him would only re-trigger his concussion symptoms. So, I mean, if you can't attend a football game, it's very doubtful that you'll be able to play in one. And of course, Carolina had the day off. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow will be more of a determining factor on what goes on, because if Cam Newton does practice tomorrow, it will signal a lot. I can't see him not practicing to Wednesday and Thursday and then trying to play a game against the Saints on this coming Sunday. I don't think it's going to happen like that, but we'll see. I mean, kind of hard to say, but I know last night the back-breaking play that may change everything was the fact that Derek Anderson did throw interception in the red zone, and that might be just enough for Carolina to be like, you know what, Cam, you got to get out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this. Like I said, I'm not a medical expert. I'm married to a nurse, so she knows some, but this is what they taught me in biology when it comes to concussions. In your head, you don't just have a skull floating there. It sits in what's called cerebrospinal fluid, which is basically just this I mean, layman's terms, I guess you call it brain fluid. But when you get a concussion, or you get into a bad car wreck and you have that whole whiplash thing, what it is your head moves so quickly in multiple directions, forward then backward, is that fluid shifts. And when it does, it allows your brain to have direct contact with your wall of the skull. And you can actually get bruises on the brain, which can lead to extremely dangerous things like blood clots and everything. You can have swelling of the brain. All kinds of stuff can happen because it's shifted so violently that protective fluid is no longer around it to cushion it. So it's not something to mess with. You can say, you strain a muscle in your leg. Yeah, maybe you got a strained calf. You play next week, but your brain, that's what makes you. That's what drives everything in your body. So, anything, I understand the NFL and NFLPA's recent, march to try to deal with this type of issue, because when it comes to the brain, there's really so much we don't understand. And what we do understand, we know that it is so easy to throw off that equilibrium and that harmony the brain has sitting in that very fragile, when you think about it, skull. So any type of injury that could happen, especially in a football-related environment, if he has to sit out the rest of the year, and the Saints just went through that with a player having, quoted what Sean Payton said, one of the most violent concussion symptoms and concussions he'd ever seen, you do that. You don't force a player to come back in, ever. If you do, I think that you are then liable for that person's life, not just the game or their contract or monetary reimbursement to their families. You're responsible for that person's life. And the concussions really are probably the biggest thing that need to be dealt with in the NFL. I know a lot of people worry that's going to make the game soft or it changes contact, but let me say this. I thought the same thing when they laid out all these new rules about hits. But we still see hard, awesome hits every game, but they're cleaner and they're safer. You don't have to clothesline somebody in the head to have an awesome hit. I still see plenty of safeties in the NFL right now laying out running backs and receivers, knocking them in the chest, and the worst thing that happens is they lose their breath for a couple minutes, and that is fine. I remember when Reggie Bush got rocked against the Eagles. He got up a couple of plays later and was perfectly okay. But if you hit somebody in the head, that simply isn't going to happen because it's so dangerous. And I didn't mean to get off on a little rant and tantrum there, but I worry about that stuff because we've seen Saints players get hit with this, and I don't want anybody to have to go through that. And Cam Newton, if he really has had 2 in a month, that guy doesn't need to come near a football field.
And that's what I'm gonna stay with. And you could see the days and again, I'm like you. I'm not a doctor. I don't try to play one on TV and not on radio or whatever have you.
Oh yeah,
but I have worked in a hospital before. I've seen people who have suffered concussions. And there are certain things that you can see, that glazed over look in their eyes and stuff like that. Like, there are certain things that you can lead to. And yes, there are different levels of concussions. And maybe Cam has just so happened to suffer a mild concussion, if you want to call it that. Anytime your brain moves, rattles, shakes, whatever you want to call it, and as Rev so eloquently described, when that brain fluid moves and your brain has a chance to touch the skull wall, there's no such thing as mild when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to maintain he suffered 2. And if that's the case, then I think at this point it may be wise for Panthers to kind of sit Cam down for another week. But again, it's all in the idea that, as Wes put so well, we don't really know about the brain as well as we could. So it may just be the idea that he can pass concussion protocol and play in this game and take take a hit that's not even a violent or vicious hit, but he just happened to get pushed down and hit his head a certain way, and now he's dazed up again.
Yeah,
I don't want to say I don't want to see Cam play, even though it may benefit the Saints. I don't want to say that I want him to sit out, even though it may benefit the Saints. Well, no matter what it is, at the end of the day, we just want to see the guy healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
That's about it.
I will say we've had some fans that we've dealt with before seem to have trouble with that whole separating football from humanity aspect, because you can hate a player all day long, but I don't want anybody to have to suffer from things like concussions, because that could have long-term effects. And when it comes to Cam Newton, I don't want him to not play, because it's advantageous for the Saints. I want him to not play because I want him to have the best possible healing from these type of injuries. And if it is like me and Bryan suspect, and he has had multiple in a short period of time, we don't want him to be the guy who, like many NFL players now, 30 years later, have lost mobility in a lot of their appendages and aren't able to do much anymore because their brain has long-term effects from things like concussions. I mean, there's reason those lawsuits are out there. Yeah, I'm sure, like everything, some people are just riding the wave to try to get their part of it. But, I mean, that's a legitimate thing. So, above all, I was with Kyle before the show praying for not just, the show and the people involved with all this, but just the players in the games, because I don't want to see anybody injured. And those that do get injured, one of the first things I do when the Saints players get injured is I tweet them, that I'm praying for them, because that's the worst part of the game to me is injuries. There's nothing worse than injuries to me.
Oh, absolutely. I think some fans, and that I always try to do this, and people try to give me flack for it, but it's realistic in theory. There's a difference between fans and fanatics. And yes, I understand that, fanatic is just the longer term for fan. But no, there's a difference, because a fanatic doesn't care. They are the people who really believe that, your player should go maim the other guy because all that matters is a win. A fan understands that guy who you want to be maimed, he has to go home to a family. Whether it be he has kids, he has a mom and dad, his brother, sister, there's somebody that's dependent on him. Fans understand that. Fanatics don't care. And that's why I always say there's a difference between a fan and a fanatic. And, for anybody that's listening, listen, man, I know I get accused of being, I play the fence, or, I may be a Saints fan, I may not be. You really don't know because, I hate on the Saints, whatever you want to call it. No, there's a difference between me and you. And I call it like I see it. If the Saints are good, I give those who play well, I give them their due. If the Saints play poorly, I can't make up an excuse because you believe I'm supposed to support the team no matter what. Sometimes the best support you can give someone is a straight, direct look in the face and an honest opinion or an honest assessment. And that's what sometimes you have to do it. Eventually, some of you younger Saints fans are going to have kids. And you're going to have to look at your kid one day in the eye and tell them that, that D-, that's not good enough. And, of course, you can give them ice cream and hug and kiss them all you want to. And, hey, you got a D-, here you go. Here's some ice cream. But one of these days you're going to have to look at your kid and tell them, you know what, a D- ain't good enough. You have to do better because you love them. I love my Saints. I want to see them do better. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and give them ice cream when I know they can play better. That's the way it rolls. So for all you fanatics out there, understand that when you want to see these guys maimed and, knocked out of the game and all of this stuff like that, man, remember that there's a fanatic on the other side that's saying the same thing about Drew Brees, and I'm pretty sure you would hate that.
Yeah, and see, that's why I love Falcons Hate Week. It's one of my favorite weeks of the NFL season. But when people are talking about wanting Matty Ice injured, or they hope he, Cam Jordan breaks his leg or something like that, I can't get in on that, man. These are people with families. These are people, I don't care their backgrounds or attitudes. I don't want that for anybody, because in the reverse, I don't want some stupid Falcon fan hoping, Drew Brees breaks his neck and is a paraplegic. And, I mean, we've seen Falcons fans talk about how they wish Katrina would have wiped out all of New Orleans. I mean, that crap has no place in football. So, that's we've gotten on a rant that we probably don't need to. But, I mean, maybe somebody does need to hear it to make them draw back a little bit, because some people get so overboard, especially on places like Twitter, because they think it's a shield and nobody will ever know about it in real life, which is all just utter crap. But, yeah, man, there's no place in sports fandom or sports in general for wishing injuries on anybody.
Not at all. And I think people, like you said, Twitter is the ultimate, instant courage, elixir. It's the ultimate thing to give somebody instant courage to say whatever you want to say. But I'm like, even you and I, Rev, we've had, for people who don't know the history between me and Rev, we've had our fair share of battles when it came to Twitter. But we've always maintained the mutual respect for one another, and the idea that you have an opinion and you're strong about it and you're able to present it well. I try to do the same thing, and that's why we're able to sit down and do this show the way we can, because we both know the other guy is coming from a good space. Most of the time on Twitter, you get people who really don't care about logic, reason, or whatever else. They just want to be idiots. And it's not everybody, but there's a large population of people who believe in that. Like, I'll just be the biggest idiot I can be on here, and that'll get me attention, and that's really all it's about. But, when you're talking about sound, logical fans, you guys out there understand that, there's more to this than just, wins and losses. It's about not